Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. Again, it's nice to be back at UCLA. It's been 6 years since I graduated, so it's good to be here. Nice and warm. And again, I'm Kristine Palma, and I'll be presenting on the Taboo Issue, Black Queerness, Privacy, and Collective Memory in Sport. On April 17, 2013, Brittney Griner, the WNBA's #1 draft pick, came out during a televised post-draft interview with Sports Illustrated. A week later, Jason Collins, a veteran NBA player, made history by becoming the first gay athlete to play for a major American sports team. This paper theorizes what factors led to the discrepant discourses that shaped the outcomes of Griner's and Collins' coming out stories, as well as the legacies of racism, homophobia, sexism, and the surveillance of marginalized peoples that undergird their coming out narratives. This paper demonstrates that a complex schemata of collective remembering and forgetting move these coming out narratives within and through real and imagined boundaries between the fantasies of post-racialism and the material realities of social inequalities. I assert that collective remembering and forgetting function to replace invisibility with a carefully regulated, segregated visibility. So the taboo issue. In April 2012, Brittney Griner rose to fame when she led Baylor's women's basketball team to an undefeated season and an NCAA basketball championship. She broke several records throughout her collegiate career, which earned her the reputation of being one of the greatest female collegiate athletes of all time. During her senior year, sports analysts and fans speculated that she may be the first female athlete to play for a men's professional basketball team. Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, publicly expressed interest in drafting Griner. It was not just her performance on the court that captivated sports fans and commentators, but her presence on and off the court as well. At 6'8", she towered over other players. She wore dreadlocks, baggy clothes, and was unapologetically black and masculine throughout her career. While this drew racist, sexist, and homophobic comments from some sports spectators, her presence signaled a possible end to a long history of lesbian baiting, particularly that of women of color in women's collegiate sports. In the moments leading up to WNBA's draft, Griner became one of the most acclaimed professional female athletes since Candace Parker, who was also in WNBA. On April 17, 2013, Sports Illustrated's Maggie Gray asked Brittney Griner about her thoughts on coming out as a gay professional athlete during a televised interview that was supposed to cover the results of the WNBA draft. Griner found herself in a position where she felt obligated to come out publicly as a lesbian. Incidentally, Griner became the first professional athlete to come out at the beginning of their career. 2 months later, ESPN published an extensive article and photo shoot that covered Griner's biography that focused on her gender nonconformity and coming out story. In both instances, the public was generally indifferent to her coming out story. They dismissed it as banal. Griner, all at once, was spectacular and unremarkable. So this is actually the cover of the ESPN magazine, and the actual title was called The Taboo Issue. In contrast, Jason Collins' coming out narrative was carefully constructed as a self-narrated article in Sports Illustrated. The cover featured a professional headshot of Jason Collins. The issue was titled Exclusive, The Gay Athlete, followed by a direct quote from Collins. "I didn't set out to be the first openly gay athlete in an major American sports team, but since I am, I'm happy to start the conversation." Before readers even open the magazine, Sports Illustrated has already set up a framework through which Collins' narrative is to be understood. In the article, Collins describes himself as a trailblazer of gay representations in professional sports. "I wish I wasn't the kid in the classroom raising his hand and saying, 'I'm different.' If I had my way, someone else would have done this. Nobody has, which is why I'm raising my hand." This statement was released less than 2 weeks after Brittney Griner, however cursory and incidental, came out publicly as a gay professional athlete. Public reaction to Jason Collins' coming out narrative stands in stark contrast to Griner's. Immediately after Sports Illustrated published Collins' article, the WNBA Players Association released a public statement congratulating Collins for his bravery for being the first athlete to address LGBT visibility. Collins' status as a national hero was further concretized when President Barack Obama made a personal phone call to Collins congratulating him on coming out. A year later, he'd be named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. This is a man who never was a full-time starter as an NBA player and remained outside of the spotlight throughout his 12-year career. Yet, he became the first gay athlete in a major American team sports, and thus a national LGBT icon, even though Griner and a long list of other queer athletes, predominantly female queer athletes, preceded him. It's a collective remembering and forgetting. Who gets to make history? Although Griner came out publicly before Collins, she is not considered the first gay professional athlete to play for a major American team sport. While temporality determines the sequencing of events, it does not determine who influences our social trajectory. When discourses, ranging from sports media to political discourses, construct Collins as the first gay athlete, they're not speaking of chronology or temporality. They are drawing boundaries that determine who gets to matter and in what ways they are allowed to matter. The fact is, neither Griner nor Collins is the first gay athlete. There is a long list of gay athletes that preceded them. Collective remembering and forgetting were deployed to fabricate the first gay athlete in the United States. Selective remembering functions to distort the histories of homophobia that rendered queer athletes to be unremarkable. Strategic forgetting creates an imagined moment where the realities of erasure are displaced with an imagined absence or lacking. Selective remembering and strategic forgetting create a moment in which history can reward itself for filling this arbitrary absence or a lacking of queer athletes. As a nation, the United States engaged in collective amnesia to create a context in which either Griner or Collins had the possibility of becoming the first gay athlete. First meaning the first to matter on a public and national level. Complex threads of collective remembering and forgetting were tightly interwoven to create a social fabric in which Griner would not only be forgotten, but never known as the first gay athlete. It created a context in which Collins could become the first gay athlete, even when, as I said previously, a long line of queer athletes preceded him. I also want to talk about erasing queer narratives, or omitting discussions of race. So aside from including Jason Collins' quote, "I'm black and I'm gay," and Brittany Griner's statement, "I am a strong black lesbian woman," sports journalists fail to acknowledge the complexities of Collins and Griner's identities. Sports journalists reduced their narratives to queer coming out stories so that they were uncomplicatedly usable for white audiences. These articles fail to analyze how racialized bodies produce unique relationships to queerness. These failures are deliberate. Even when they fail to represent the complexity of Griner's and Collins' narratives, they succeed by regulating and segregating the visibility of marginalized people. So specifically, this paper demonstrates how collective remembering and forgetting are employed to construct a post-racial American society in which these reductive coming out stories function to stabilize existing schemas of social inequalities. Collective forgetting is not necessarily dependent on the complete absence of the subjects or objects that they aim to erase. Collective forgetting is strategic. It can operate through these subjects, arranging them to be read in particular ways and not others. In the case of Griner and Collins, race is not completely absent. Race is legible through Griner's and Collins' bodies, and through the cursory usage of Black histories to contextualize Collins' coming out story in particular. Some sports journalists asserted that Jason Collins was the Jackie Robinson of our time. There was no discussion about how both challenged racism in professional sports and the profound impacts that they had on broader social relations, nor was there a discussion about how Collins challenges homophobia in communities of color or racism in queer communities. Instead, he is curiously inserted into hegemonic national histories, in which his multiply layered identity is collapsed into a narrative that likens sexual orientation discrimination to racial discrimination, without interrogating how both can be experienced simultaneously. These discourses suggest that sexuality and race are mutually exclusive. More importantly, this particular comparison suggests that US professional sports teams have already overcome racial boundaries, opposed to the reality that overcoming racial boundaries are a constant process of athletes of color. Overcoming racial boundaries is never finished. Both Griner and Collins are denied opportunities to describe that they too are in a constant process of negotiating racial boundaries. The selection of particular Black histories and the ways in which they are represented are also indicative of the ways collective remembering and forgetting operate to neutralize the socio-political power of Griner's and Collins' coming out story. While sports journalists comfortably integrate Jackie Robinson's life histories into their articles, They do so by ambiguously making references to histories of racial discrimination within professional sports, but never extending that argument to analyze how white supremacy and racial barriers within and outside of sport continue to exist today. The fragmentation of Black and queer histories is key to suppressing not just Griner and Collins as individuals, but the symbolic power that the representations hold. I conclude this paper by asking the audience to reflect on whether or not coming out stories are a form of surveillance. Are they extensions of homophobic and racist histories that demand marginalized groups to disclose personal information to maintain and imagine national security? I argue that coming out stories are products of a liminal space in which queer people are not to be integrated nor expelled from the body politic. Instead, they are represented through the regulated and segregated visibility of the coming out story. The close surveillance of marginalized people and the regulation of their representations helps maintain existing schemas of social inequalities, as well as the myths of post-racialism and meritocracy that master existence. They are tools to survey the mobility of marginalized people and the ways that their experiences are centered in the public eye. The unveiling of surveillance begs questions of privacy, autonomy, and liberal personhood. Who has the right to privacy? Who is an autonomous subject in the United States?